My name is Elizabeth Howell, and this is my proposal for spin recovery training regulation changes here in the United States. I am a student at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Prescott, and will be graduating this semester with a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautics and 2 minors in Space Physics and Aeronautical Studies. I have a long aviation background. I started flight training in 2020 when I was 17, and I received my New Zealand Civil Aviation Authority private pilot license in 2021. And when I moved to the United States, I received my private pilot foreign-based license in 2022. I also earned my instrument rating in 2024, and since I have stepped back from flight training to focus on my degree and future aspirations to be a police officer. My hobbies are aerobatics, powerlifting, and trail running. I mainly do powerlifting and trail running, but aerobatics is my favorite hobby. I just don't get many opportunities to do it, unfortunately. So, my concern today is about spin recovery. I'm actually doing my capstone and undergraduate research projects about spin recovery. So, the current regulations for private and commercial pilots is spin avoidance training. So, private and commercial pilots are trained in spin recognition and stall recovery, but they never actually experience a true spin or spin recovery. They merely learn about what the recovery would look like if they were to ever wind up in a spin. Certified flight instructors are the only pilots who are required to go through spin recovery training for the main purpose of if they're with a student who gets them into a spin by accident during training, they're able to recover from it. My proposed regulation change would be to maintain the current regulations for private pilots, but strongly encourage participation in voluntary spin recovery training. Get the word out there that you can decide to do spin recovery training if you want to become a better pilot and more in tune with your aircraft. Commercial pilots, I believe, should require at least about 2.5 hours of spin recovery training, just enough to get their feet wet, to feel what a spin feels like, and to feel the recovery, to actually have the motor skill there instead of just what they learned off of a whiteboard or out of a textbook. As for CFIs, they do spin recovery training, so maintaining the current regulations would be perfectly fine for that. If anything, they would be more prepared for that training because they would have already undergone it as a commercial pilot. Positive impacts will be overall safety in the aviation community. Pilot reaction time to loss of control will be improved, and there will be a better understanding of flight mechanics in general. Any pilot who has gone through loss of control training of any kind all agree that they feel more in tune and feel like they have a better understanding of flight mechanics in general and how their aircraft is truly going to respond to their control inputs. Operational efficiency as well. Pilots will all already have some experience with loss of control. Therefore, airlines and general aviation training that require more loss of control training or more emergency scenario training along the lines of spin recovery, pilots will already have experience with it. They can go into that training understanding about what they're going to go into and just mostly being a refresher. Trade-offs, there certainly are trade-offs, and there are reasons why this is not a current regulation. Stakeholder impact would be this training may weed out pilots uncomfortable with performing loss of control recovery in flight. Some pilots may never go through CFI training if they do not want to perform spin recovery, and they'll find other ways to get to the airlines. But if all pilots were required to perform spin recovery training, loss of control recovery, some would be weeded out, unfortunately. The extra cost and time would also be a negative impact on pilots in training. That's why I don't think it needs to be a lot of time required just to get the feel for it so that they actually have the motor skills is enough so that it's not a major cost on the student pilots and it's not a major addition of time to their training. Safety, there will be new hazards in training. And the subcommittee in 1989, it was reviewed why spin recovery training was taken out of the private pilot syllabus in 1949, and it was upheld for the fact that they found it to be safer for pilots to do spin avoidance training than to do spin recovery training because more accidents were happening in training than were being prevented by the training. This can be prevented with the rise of simulators that create true-to-life spin recovery scenarios for pilots. Burdens on companies, the regulations, it would depend on how the regulations are put in, if pilots would be required to go back and complete the training they never did before because they already have their commercial or not. But most pilots have gone down the CFI route. So most pilots have already undergone spin recovery training, so I don't believe this would be a huge burden on companies. I have plenty of resources as this is my capstone project. Highly recommend looking at all these resources. Jerzanik's Staying in Control, very good article about loss of control training, as well as the second one, Kohlbauer, Recovery Training and Simulator Improves Performance in Psychophysiological State of Pilots. Simulators could be a way to introduce pilots to spin recovery and create a safe environment for that, and also help reduce how many pilots are weeded out by introducing that training. And the other resources go right alongside the same thing. The subcommittee is mentioned here as well, and Railsback mentions a specific crash and how training might have been able to prevent that. Thank you for listening to my proposal.